Thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here. And it's from listening to the presentation today, I was thinking, wow, my story is so different because, first of all, it's an entrepreneurial story. I run a startup in New York City, and it's also really a founder story. And so that's why it says the roots of a hippie capitalist rioter, because from my perspective, Sweet Riot and many startups are very impacted by their founders and where their founders are from. So I'm really going to take you back to the roots of Sweet Riot and where I came from and how this story kind of unfolded in front of my eyes. So let's start with where I'm from. This is the lovely state of Michigan. And that was where I was born. And this is an important part of the story because I'm not from Detroit, and I'm not from New York City, and I'm not from a place most of you have ever possibly visited. It's a town of 2,000 people, and I actually didn't grow up in the town. I grew up 7 miles into the country in the township of 500 people. And so I was really playing in the country ditches and hanging out on the farm while I grew up. And I love the state of Michigan. I am a proud Midwesterner, and that's where I grew up. That is my grandpa. So we saw another grandfather today. And I think, it's important to know his story and my great-grandfather's story. They were immigrants. They were community activists. They were entrepreneurs, small business owners. They were farmers. They were always taking care of their community. They were incredibly hardworking. And when I think about my grandpa Endline, I just think of how courageous he was. He was always the bravest guy in the room. And when you're talking about entrepreneurship, you need some courage and bravery in the mix. Because like I say, you're getting on the roller coaster and you fasten your seatbelt of entrepreneurship, and then the roller coaster goes like this. So you need to be ready for that. Oh, okay. These are my grandparents, the complete pair, Oscar and Clara Endline, and this is us on the farm. And this is an important picture because I grew up a quarter of a mile away from their farm. And so I not only had loving parents, but I had grandparents really involved in the mix. Clara, highly social and extroverted, and Oscar, extremely brave. And I spent lots of time there just on the land. And as my mom would say, don't take the road to Grandpa and Grandma's, please take the cornfield, because it was so much safer because tractors were barreling down the country road. And instead, the safest path to my grandparents was kind of walking as straight as possible through the corn stalks to get there. And so that's what I did almost every day growing up. Now, my mom, she grew up in this small town, but for some reason, she was this amazing gourmet cook. And I always had the most fresh, natural food at the table. It was amazing. And the vegetables were straight from her garden or straight from Grandpa's garden. Gourmet was always around the home. Very sad to hear the news. And this is my mom in the 70s. She actually took a very small group course with James Beard in the 70s in his home in New York City, which is kind of crazy. So for some reason, my family was not completely small town. They had some broad thinking as well. And then, of course, there's my dad, who, growing up, married to my mom 27 years, crazy, closeted gay father in the middle of this small town. Finally, very international, very globally minded, bringing home diverse people from all over the place at any given moment. And at the age of 18, kind of announced, I'm moving to New York City. And all of a sudden, he was living this new gay life. And thank God, the family's totally at peace with this, and mom's remarried, and, it works. But that's part of my story. And celebrating life and accepting people and celebrating diversity is just the way we always think about it in my family and the way I think about it as well. Now, New York City came into the story very early. I'm not really sure how this small country girl has this 180 kind of interest in the land of New York City, but this is me at the age of 6 in Chinatown. And you'll notice in the photo, my mom and sister are somewhat happy, but I am ecstatic. I am so excited to be in New York City. And this love and passion for the city and my lovely pink hat and blue shag jacket started very, very early. In this influence of kind of urban culture and people from all different countries and languages I was just so excited about, and it started at a young age. What also started is some form of entrepreneurship. This is my first market. I'm selling groceries here at home. And I just had inclinations of entrepreneurial things early on. My mom said that in kindergarten, the teacher asked me to clean the chalkboard, and all of a sudden they had a team of people, and we were all cleaning it, and I was delegating at the age of 5. Very weird. I don't really know what was going on, but that was just there. And you'll see the M&Ms because I loved school fundraisers, and I loved selling candy. And I always had to be the #1 seller, no matter what. And so I was selling candy literally dating back to probably the age of 6. So that all feeds into this Sweet Riot creation. Now, I think it was college that fully changed my life, and it was really international experiences during university. I went on a year-long study abroad program in Germany. I traveled all throughout Europe. I came back. I wrote my senior thesis, my senior summer, traveling around the world, sponsored by this organization called Circumnavigators. And I was now deeply in this zone of culture, social entrepreneurship, changing the world. And I joined this organization called AIESEC, which is the world's largest student-run organization. It's in 90 different countries. It's setting up programs around the world. And it was teaching me really in the early 90s about microfinance and Muhammad Yunus and corporate social responsibility and social entrepreneurship. And this was back before this stuff was in vogue. This is very early on. So by 92, I knew what these things were, and I was very fascinated by them. And if it's at all possible, I actually think at the age of 21, I thought, I'm committing my life to social entrepreneurship, and I'm going to do whatever I can the rest of my career to help change the world. Now, I'm not sure you actually can know that fully at 21, but I guess I told myself that was what the story was. And my first job out of college was moving straight to New York City and running the national office of AIESEC. And AIESEC, again, for me, it was like I would go to an AIESEC international conference and I'd be sitting around the table with people from around the world, and it felt like the United Nations. And we were running our countries, and we were setting up these cultural exchange programs for students from around the world. And it was amazing at the age of 20-something. And I also helped open AIESEC's operations in China. So I was having experiences in Latin America and in Asia and in Europe at a very young age. So what happened next? I'm still in this zone of my whole life is about social entrepreneurship and changing the world in some way. So my first job out of AIESEC was going to the World Bank in Washington, D.C. I then went to work for the National Foundation for Teaching Entrepreneurship to inner city kids, and working with Microsoft on a lot of educational internet technology initiatives. I kind of call this a little bit of a fluke in the picture, but due to a lot of great mentors around me, I ended up as a diversity candidate at Harvard Business School, getting my MBA with all of this scholarship money because I wasn't an investment banker or consultant. I was this public school kid from a tiny little town who was doing social entrepreneurship, and they said, we'll give you a lot of scholarships to come here. And I said, okay, that sounds pretty cool. And so I ended up at Harvard getting my MBA and kind of walking down the hallway and going, what's Exeter, what's Andover, what's McKinsey, what's Goldman Sachs? Like, what are these places? And it was important for me to learn that, though, to kind of continue my progression in the business world. But I made a stop at HBS. And after HBS, I wanted to join kind of this internet social change revolution. And so I moved to Silicon Valley, and I was working at Yahoo and doing marketing and product design and having a great time. But the reality is my essays to Harvard Business School were all about creating this company that was going to change the world. And I really needed to get back to that. I had the convertible. I had the San Francisco life. I was at a great company. But I really thought to myself, this is not what I'm meant to be doing in this world, and I need to fix it. So for me, of course, that meant getting back to New York City and kind of landing on my dad's living room floor, living with him and his partner and having a great bootstrapped entrepreneurial time. And then also, what I would say, I entered the dream state. Like, I just really didn't know exactly what this company was going to look like. And so I thought to myself, the companies I really love and admire are those like The Body Shop or Ben & Jerry's. And I want to create consumer products that people love, that make a difference in the world. But I didn't want to do cosmetics, and I didn't want to do ice cream. And you've kind of already heard that I like candy, so somehow I ended up thinking, well, maybe I can change the candy world. How do I do that? And so my first stop was literally, you know what? I'm going to go to Asia for the summer. I've got a bunch of friends there. I'll start writing the business plan in Asia. I'm very inspired by that region of the world. And so I landed on couches and couch surf for summer based out of Hong Kong, went in and out of candy factories in China, and thought to myself, this is exactly what I don't want to make. It's sugary, artificial candy. I have to get back to my natural roots. I need to go back to where this all really comes from. And that's when I discovered the chocolate bean. And I discovered this because I thought, chocolate's really kind of the bellwether of the candy industry, so I should probably do something innovative with chocolate, but where does chocolate really come from? And I think at that time, I actually thought chocolate came from factories in Switzerland and Belgium. And I started to realize, you know what, that's actually not the story. And I ran into this person at a trade show that had these beans. And I was like, what is this? And it's the chocolate bean. And I thought, oh my God, I have to do something with the chocolate bean. And I went running home to New York City, like passing out beans. And my friends were like, you are completely nuts. They taste terrible. What are you doing? And, but I could not let go of this fascination with cacao beans. And I know it sounds crazy, but I was really fascinated with them. And I was fascinated with the fact that it came from a fruit, and this is the fruit tree, and these are the beans inside. And this red zone, which I call the cacao belt, is plus or minus 20 degrees of the equator. And all of a sudden, this whole developing country story came to the mix. And I went on this mission to try and figure out, how can I produce this something cacao mix in Latin America directly with farmers and workers there. And I luckily, through kind of running around a lot of trade shows, found a partner from Colombia who said, I love your story, let's make things together based on the cacao bean. It was like, yes! So I found a partner, and we started making this product, chocolate-covered cacao nibs, which are little pieces of the chocolate bean covered with a layer of chocolate. And they're sitting right here, and they're really delicious. And then we just created a bar with the cacao nibs inside. And for me, this was bringing so many things full circle. So you kind of heard my story, this connection to farmers, this connection to where it really comes from, something natural, something pure, with a real change the world element. It wasn't just, I was gonna, make another chocolate bar out of Switzerland like everyone else, because that was just not gonna be my story. That would never work that way. Luckily, due to Yahoo and due to Harvard, I put a little bit of formal training into the mix so it wasn't completely whacked out, even though it still is. I took some of the product design lessons I had learned at Yahoo around ethnography and using a more cultural anthropological approach to product design, and sitting down with consumers and saying, what problems do you have with chocolate and what problems do you have with candy, and scanning the whole marketplace and looking at what was going on competitively and trying to figure out how can we create an innovation. So I applied that, and we thought of who are our target consumers and how do we really take care of them. So there was a little bit of formal marketing and business in there. But the reality is the fixation with the cacao bean was really driving it. And thank God consumers said to me, I wish I could just get a few bites of chocolate. I feel guilty with giant bars. And so the idea of this 1-calorie bite-sized chocolate bean was really born, and it made sense in the market, and it made sense for our farmers as well. So where's Sweet Riot today? We're still, a growing company. We're based in New York City. We're in the Village. I live in the Village. I walk to work every day. Our first original line is these lovely little tins. You got some chocolate bars at break that we just launched. It's sold on Virgin America nationwide. It's in Whole Foods. Actually, Sweet Riot was also sold at the MoMA Design Store. I don't know if Paula's still here, but she was involved in that decision. So it was the first food product ever in the MoMA Design Store in New York City. And it was funny because they were so interested in the purity of getting back to the bean and stripping things instead of all this chocolate that's kind of fake and artificial and processed. We were just stripping it down to what's really pure. And what also happens to be really delicious. So that's the Sweet Riot story. The headline says Sweet Riot 2.0 because we're in this wonderful stage of the company where it's time to kind of check the business model and take it to the next stage. And so I invite any of you to join this kind of Sweet Riot 2.0 thinking team that I'm putting together right now, which is how can we take the company and its products to the next level? Because for us, it's all about selling millions of units, because the more units we sell, the more farmers and workers we impact. So we don't want to stay small. We want to continue to grow. And any of you could be a partner in that growth. So thank you for listening.